I thought we would do to start off is, since we're talking about supporting dialogue between two people, is just to spend a couple minutes to look at, what is conflict, and then to kind of dive a little bit deeper into that through some practical experience. And some of you have done some of this with me before, but this will be new for others of you. But it's kind of it'll form the basis of then how we figure out how to support others when they're in conflict. So to start off with, we have this word dialogue that, we've probably all heard many, many times before, whether in English or in Arabic or other languages. And so when you hear this term, what comes up for you? What are the things that you think of or that come to mind when you hear the idea of dialogue? And why don't we go ahead again? I'll have you one more time share in the chat, and I'll read some of them out. So this word dialogue, when you hear that, what comes to your mind? What do you think of? Okay. Exchange, connection, communicating, okay. Mutual encounter through words, a human bond, great. Listening. Responsiveness, sharing, empathy, okay. Two people in a situation, talking. Anything else? So opposite of monologue, okay, yeah. Trying to understand and be understood. Yeah. So obviously in that example, trying to understand and to be understood, we're talking about two different things happening there, right? What is one of those things that we need to make sure happens? And you can say verbally or write it in the chat, whichever you prefer. So we're talking about understanding and being understood. It sounds like that for me, that involves two aspects. What is that?
Maybe receiving and exteriorizing.
Yeah. Others put listening, active listening. Yeah. So there's both the exteriorizing or expressing, right? We have to express, and we also, that needs to be received. So we want to make sure that if dialogue is happening, that those two things are happening. And I'm guessing all of us have experienced conflict at one point or another in our lives. So what typically happens in conflict around those two aspects of dialogue in your experience? What happens to listening and expressing? Anyone willing to share? Miscommunication, okay. Yeah. Focus on being understood. We get heated and emotional. Yeah. So a lot of emotion comes up in us, and it makes it harder for us to stay present. And so we often focus on, we want to be heard, we want to be understood. And so often what can happen between those emotions and that desire to be understood is that, tempers start to raise, voices start to raise, frustration starts to raise, and we find it really difficult. We respond rather than understand. Yeah. And so if we're going to support two people in dialogue to truly both express, but also to be heard, then, we need to help that to happen, so that both get a chance to express, but there's also listening happening as well. And so we're going to do a series of paired exercises here just to explore more deeply that whole dynamic of expressing and listening. So, and one of the things that we've just acknowledged is, that we tend to respond, as Tony wrote, respond rather than understand, or we tend to talk rather than listen. And so we really want to create an environment where that listening can be equally supported with expression. And so, and as we've heard, that listening kind of tends to go away when we're getting into conflict. So what we're going to do in a minute here is we're going to break into pairs. And we're going to have one person speaking and one person listening. The speaker is going to just speak for about 2 minutes. No, actually, let's see. Let's do it for somewhere around 3 to 4 minutes. The speaker, and in this first round, I'm going to just invite you to share anything that's alive in you. It could be a fun experience you've had recently, some interesting book that you wanted to share, or a movie that you saw that was like, wow, that was really cool. I really liked some aspect of this, or I learned something from it, or some experience you've had at work or at family that was positive that you'd want to just share a little bit about. So anything like that. For this first round, speaker is free to choose whatever it is that has some meaning to you, that was something positive in your life. And then the listener, for this first round, I'm going to invite you to mostly be silent, but then every minute and a half, what I want the listener to do is to say back a summary of what you heard the speaker say. So it won't be like a parrot, word for word. Oh, you were talking about your sister, and your sister said this, and then you said that, and then your sister said this. No, it doesn't have to be, word for word like that. But just like, what were the main points that you heard that person say in that minute and a half that they were speaking? So the speaker will speak for a minute and a half, and then the listener will say back a summary of that, whatever they heard. And then the speaker will continue to share, a bit more new information of whatever they were talking about. And again, after a minute and a half, then the listener will be again invited to say back a summary of that new part of what they just heard. And so we'll go back and forth. So probably as a speaker, you should probably have 2 opportunities this first time. I mean, as a listener, sorry, you'll have 2 opportunities to say back a summary of what you heard. Okay, if we go for roughly 4 minutes. So both speaker and listener try to, find a good place to stop, roughly a minute and a half in, to give that listener that opportunity. But also listener, you could also just jump in and say, hey, could I just interrupt for a second? I want to just say back what I'm hearing so far. So either way, between the 2 of you can work that out. And then at the 4-minute mark, we'll send a message through that'll be an opportunity for you to switch speaker and listener. So same partner, stay in the same room, but just so you both have an opportunity to speak and to try this listening and saying back a summary of what you heard.